So, inside every answer that you get inside of an application, there's a lot of hidden truth behind it, right? So you have to be strategic with the questions you ask, because you're actually not only looking for the answer, but you're looking at how they answer the answer, if that makes sense. So when I ask, like, how much another debt do you have besides a mortgage, I'm listening to how much pain they have, but also figuring out who I'm talking to, right? So they're going to respond a few ways. So number one, they're going to say, we got about 30 grand in credit card debt, and they say it fast. And that tells me he knows his numbers. But if he says, I don't know, I think then I know that there's another party involved, right? And especially if he says think, more than likely he doesn't really know, right? Like if you handle the finances in your household, you know the numbers. It's just something that kind of rules your life. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, if they're spot on, they give you exact numbers right away, then you're talking to the right person, because they're going to be able to give you all the emotional tie behind the result that they want.
Yeah, I think right now, a lot of it is just like being new and kind of not knowing what to expect when they ask me questions. I'm like, I think at this point, if I could more smoothly, kind of like, great, that's a great question, great point. Let me go check real quick. Not every time James he sits right next to me, so I can usually ask him pretty quick, but he gets busy and is up and at him sometimes. So just kind of knowing how to handle things I don't know yet, but yet still sound professional.
Right. Okay. So let me just confirm real quick. So you are on the junior team, refinance team, right? Mm-hmm. And how long have you been a loan officer?
Yeah, I think pretty much a month. I think it just
okay.
hit over a month.
Okay. And so the leads that you're dealing with are internet leads, CSR transfers, right? Mm-hmm. And then so typically you get hit with these questions that you may not necessarily know the answer to, and you just want to be able to kind of answer it, but in a professional way where they don't lose credit in you. Is that what I hear? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is going to happen even when you're seasoned, right? So you're going to get underwriting questions. I get underwriting questions to this day that I'm not exactly sure of. And the last thing that we want to do is give an answer that we're not certain of, because then it's going to radiate through your tonality, right? Not only that, but after you guess, it's going to sit in your mind, and your focus is going to sway from actually hearing all the important things you need to hear in that conversation to sell them later, right? Mm-hmm. So I think you hit it on the nose, is that you come up with this, what I like to call a default response. And it's a default response because it's a response that's automated to where it just naturally comes out at any point you find yourself unsure, right? And so my favorite default response would be, it's a great question, Matt. As a matter of fact, when I prepare the information and send it to you, I'm gonna actually cover those details inside of it. All right. So you're actually addressing it. It's the same kind of response as saying, great question. Let me write that down, and when I send out the information later on, I'll make sure I cover that question, right? So and what it does is it addresses their concern, it answers them, but also lets them know that they have to do still A, B, and C in order to get D. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So another kind of spin to it would be like, it really depends on the scenario, but just to make sure it's specific so it's worth your time, let me go ahead and make a note of that. And when I send out the information later, I'll make sure I'll get you the exact tailor fit information that you're looking for, right? So it's a little bit more customized to them. Because that's really what they want. They don't want like a generic answer. They want something that's a little bit more specific to them. Mm-hmm. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done it a few times now. Usually it's when it's just like a cooperative borrower and stuff. They're not like hostile or anything. But sometimes it's the people that are like, I need to know this now before I waste any time and communicate. It's like, all right, well, let me try and ask now. But usually, I've done it a few times where it's like I'll include that with the offer and kind of the rates and everything that I'll send over to you in email.
Yeah, the ones who respond to that sound like a little hostile. Most of them are actually laydowns. Not laydowns, like meaning that it is kind of easy to sell them, and that's the reason why they respond that way, is because that's their way of defending themselves, because they know that they'll buy if it makes too much sense, right? Mm-hmm. So what they do is whenever they're in an environment like speaking to a salesman, and they don't want to be taken advantage of, they talk like that. So switch up the verbiage and make it more kind of tailored to that exact concern, right? So responding back to someone who's hostile and say, you know what, Matt, we operate a little bit different here. The only information I can put in front of you is information that actually applies to you. So the good news is that it's worth your time in reviewing. Whereas most companies, they're just going to give you generic information that you want to hear, so that you'll move to the next step. We don't operate that way. So let me just ask a few basic questions and make sure I can even complete the call, right? So are you using the script that I have?
Yeah, I've been kind of the intro. I feel like I just kind of have like a couple Post-it notes with like information to gather. I actually just printed out the 1003 this morning because I need to be a lot more thorough, because I want to have like a good reputation for sending the files through for processing. So I want to make sure I have everything dialed in. I've been using the the reason you're being transferred to me. I'm at liberty to disclose the information that you're hopefully looking for. And if and I kind of include the if you're shopping around, we'll have like a meet or beat policy, send it over, and if we can't, I'll let you know that you have a good rate, or if refinancing isn't in your best interest at this time, I'll save you that time. So
I wouldn't complicate it that much. Mm-hmm. Me personally, is because number one is, what if they're not shopping around? Now I've just told them to shop around, right? So we're actually setting up objections and creating walls that we don't know because we think it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, in case you're shopping around, we have a meet or beat policy. Now it's a matter of saying, okay, got it. So it's like a price match, right? So if I go to Best Buy, now they're going to think about searching it online, and that's going to open up Pandora's box because everyone is on there. And heaven forbid they get in contact with Better Mortgage or Owning, right? That has like 2.5 no cost. And like, shit, you're out of, you're out of the water. But they would have never thought about that. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So use the free script. It's absolutely free, right? And then try to use that verbatim, because you don't want to give too much, right? Like one of I read this book. It's called 48 Laws of Power, right? I think that's the name of the book, by Robert Greene. And so one of the laws that he talks about is you never want to say more than needed, right? Because what happens when you say more than needed is you're conveying less authority that way. So you put yourself in a position where you're now asking and hoping, right? You even said it in your own words. Like, hopefully what you're looking for. Like, hopefully it's what you're looking for, right? You don't want to do that, because then they'll be like, oh shit, I don't think I'm looking for that, right? You're giving, because when you engage with a prospect, that prospect is looking for any reason under the sun to end the call with you, right? Because they don't want to talk to you. Make sense? Mm-hmm. What they want from you is information. And so if we teeter off that and we kind of tease to the notion of the only information I can give to you is worth your time, right? It's I'm not just going to spit out random data. Any information I give to you is applicable today, right? It's not a marketing ad. It's not a commercial or an advertisement. This is actually applies to you. So the reason why I'm going to ask a few questions before I carry on with the phone conversation is I need to make sure I can even help you. If you're in the best loan possible, I'll let you know and save you some time. If anything, I'll point you in the right direction. And that's all they want to know, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happens is now they're not thinking of shopping. They're not thinking of ending the conversation. They want to hear what you have to say next. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to talk a lot and be a little
nervous.
over descriptive.
Yeah, you're just nervous. Mm-hmm. And it's normal, because we want to fill in the white noise, right? But you have to kind of change your perception on that and realize that, number one, that person you're talking to does not know you're a junior. They don't know you don't know a lot, right? Mm-hmm. They have no idea. The only perception that they have of you is that you're the person that's going to give them the information that they need. So play to it, right? So the lesser the better, right? I back in sales, when I was young in sales, this one closer, and I looked up to him and I asked him, I'm like, man, how do you close so much, right? And he said this one thing. He said, less history, more mystery. And I had no idea what he was talking about. And the reason why he told me that is because he would hear me and I would talk so much. I would give so much information, right? I would say so many things because I was nervous and I wanted to fill in the white noise. But the problem with that is that you're actually planting seeds and thoughts that make the prospect or the lead kind of veer off direction. And so our goal is to guide them, right? So think of it as like you're a tour guide. The only thing you're gonna, but not necessarily where you give every single fact about every monument. Like, this is the monument back in 1973. Here's a fun fact story. Not like that. A tour guide is you're talking to them and you're guiding them through, the phases. So like the 1003 in itself, in short, it's really, there's a lot of details in there, right? Like what year did you buy your home? How much did you buy your property? And if you go in order, it will sound like an interrogation. And so I have a video called 1003 Remastered. I think I shared it with the group. It's a good way to kind of understand like how to make the 1003 application a conversation, because you don't need all the full details right up front, right? I don't need to know exactly what their title is. I don't need to know the address of their employer or the phone number of the employer. So I never ask that on my first conversation, because when I ask certain questions, the last thing I want to do is make them think that they're committing to me or they're applying for something. Because again, the message right up front is, let me ask a few basic questions before I even move forward. So that's what they want to hear, because they don't want to move forward with you. That's why they're defensive and saying, I don't have any time, right? They don't want to hear a sleazy, slimy pitch. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really kind of just getting comfortable, and also record yourself, because you'll be your worst critic. And so on our phone system, you can hit record, right? And then it'll save to your voicemail, and then you can play it back later.
Okay, rather than have to like go request someone to kind of pull it.
Correct, yeah. So when you hit save, it goes to a voicemail, and then you have a 30-minute voicemail, or however long it is, because that's how you do your lock script, right?
Yeah.
So on your downtime, then just listen to it, and you'll pick up on things. You'll pick up on the reaction that they'll have when you say certain things. You'll also notice that certain objections happen typically often around the same time. And then if you backtrack your wordplay, it's because of what you said. Mm-hmm. Do you see?
Yeah.
So it says a lot. If back in the day, we didn't have like cell phones or recording systems, so we had to bring in like these little tape recorders, yeah, and just click it and just listen from there. But I had one all the time, and I would literally secretly place it by closer's desk, and then record their conversation, right, and just kind of walk away.
Bug them.
Yeah, or just bug them. Yeah, exactly. But then I would study it, because I wanted to know like what makes him different, because I'm not gonna try to recreate the wheel, right? I'm not gonna try to do the trial and error, because that's gonna take a long time. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I think it's like kind of created some, I don't want to say like bad habits already, just that with the 2-call close, so like I was nervous at first, and then just kind of got some bare minimum information, like okay, now I can get off the phone and work on pricing for a while, or however long I need to, and then as it's going through, it's like, oh, I need all this information, or like, do you have this and that? Like, oh, no. And so now I'm kind of like, it's funny. It reminds me when I got to college, like I was pretty arrogant and cocky, like growing up as a kid. I was always smart and stuff. And then when I got to college, I realized like, there's so much I don't know. Like the more I learned, the more I didn't know. So then it was like, it's like all these little training meetings and everything we've gone to. It's funny. It's like we learn more and then come back, and it's almost like, oh great, there's that much more I need to learn.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's counterproductive, but yeah, it's like got to continue to kind of chip myself down and rebuild myself like a little more thoroughly.
Yeah, in short, the 1003 is really just more or less a conversation, right? And the true nuts and bolts of it is the reason why you may feel anxious, or you may feel like, because I think I know how you feel. You feel like you might be missing something, or you feel like they might be bored, or they may not like you, right? So it's a matter of just understanding that as long as the conversation covers a few principles, like number one is you find out what their true intent is, the desire, right? So if you followed the sales training, I don't know if you participated, it was the MIDAS, mm-hmm. MIDAS, right? So in that order, so you try to find out their intent. In other words, we call it goals, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So the wrong way is asking them like, so what are your goals today, right? Because then you're giving them back the driver's seat, and they're now driving the conversation. But it's too early to let them drive the conversation, because you don't know exactly what their true intent is. At the end of the day, every single person that I ever talk to, their intent and their desire is the same. They just want to create savings. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So I already know that they want to create savings. I'm not going to ask them like, hey, what are you looking to do? What do you think I'm here to do, right? It's almost, it's a mundane question. And so if I already know that, then I need to move straight to figure out what their pain points are, right? So what their intent and what their true desire is. So I know their intent. Their intent is to lower the rate or leverage equity to pay off debt, right? It's either going to be one of the two. In other words, rate and term or cash out. It's no difference, right? It's either one. I can't do anything else. That makes sense? So once you read the script and you follow those lines, then it's important you immediately drive the conversation, which basically you start gearing towards pain. You don't ask them about, little fluff questions like, so how's your day? Like, how you feeling today? Did you watch the game? It's too soon for that. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want to talk to you. You don't have that kinship yet. So when you start off your first open-ended question, one of my favorite ones is saying, so the property I start naming things that they're familiar with, because typically we'll have the address, right? In the event we don't have the address, then you could still say the property we're talking about today, this is where you live. In other words, this is your primary home, right? So if you have the address, say the property on Myford, this is where you live, right? Okay, got it. And you should have the property profile up. So always have the property profile up, because it already positions you as an authority, as someone who's, knows something about them. So it looks like, Matt, you've owned this house since 2006. Got it. Looks like you bought it for about 275-ish. Okay. So, and the last time you refinanced it, I see here, was with, Quicken Loans back in 2018, right? Last year. Okay, cool. So outside of this debt with the mortgage, what other debts do you owe? Let's start off with credit card debt, right? And so now you're starting to figure out if they need cash or leverage their equity. So in the event that they say, I got no debt, right? I got some student loans, but debt's not really a concern. Then you know where to go in the conversation. It's going to be a matter of rate and term, and how can I help him, depending on what his goal is. So then I might direct to a question of saying, is your intent to maximize monthly savings, or are you looking to pay the house off sooner? You see, now I'm either going to go shorter term, or this guy's just going to look for a rate and term lowest rate, which means even then, it doesn't necessarily mean that even if he has a 3.5, that I can't do anything for him, because I can show him how to buy his rate down to 2.75. Does that make sense? So even if he says, I got a 3.5, I don't have any debt, I'm just looking to maximize my monthly savings. Okay, got it. So with regards to the condition of the property, because even if they don't have debt, I could still maybe talk him into getting some equity to improve the quality of the home, right? So a way to open up that conversation would be like, the property, is this going to be your last and final home, or maybe a stepping stone till your next house, right? So I need to know how attached to the home he is. And so if he says, no, I think we're gonna retire here, this is gonna be where we're gonna live forever. Okay, got it. So now I know it's a long-term play, and this guy eventually wants to pay it off. But if he says, I don't know, we'll be here for at least 3 to 5 years. Now I'm thinking, okay, how can I make this guy the most money when it comes time to sell it? Either way, the good question to be asked is, the condition of the property right now, based on what you ideally think would be perfect, 10 being perfect, how would you rate the condition of the home, or the state of the property right now? And most often they'll say like 8, and then you can ask them, say, okay, what could you do to the home to make it your perfect 10? And then they'll start thinking like, my wife wants, a new kitchen, we need a new bathroom, I need new flooring, right? And so this opens up the idea of pulling out money to do the improvements. So even though he doesn't have any debt, and even though he has a 3.5, I could sell him and figure out what his true intent and desire is, right? And so after he tells you anything he wants to do to make it a 10, you can bring up questions like great, how much do you think how much in equity do you think that would get you? And say probably about an extra 30,000. Okay, that might help, especially if you plan to sell the house in 5 years. On the flip side, say, oh, that might be great considering that you plan to pay it off. This is where you're going to live forever, right? You see what I'm saying? Now they're a little bit more attached to your message. But the gist of it is that most loan officers, and you're going to hear it from people around you, especially those that are not like you, that study their craft and try to learn how to be better, is that they're just going to go with the generic process. How can I help you? Okay, what rate do you have? All right, well, I got this 30-year fix. They're just selling. Does that make sense? They're talking about things that are just very generic, and that's how you lose at this game.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like they'll just be like, yeah, saving money. Like, oh, what are you looking to accomplish? And usually when they give me a short answer, I almost enjoy it a little more, because then I get to, I feel like it's better rapport just asking and then getting answers, and then kind of like making a conversation out of it, like
Yeah.
finding out, trying what they're trying to do, and then ask like how long they're looking to stay in the home, or things like that. But sometimes when they just give you the specific goals, it's like, or if they're a little more detailed, then it's like, all right, how do I reiterate exact? Or so
Yeah.
you're looking to do that? Like like I said.
Yeah.
So I kind of enjoy when breaking it down a little more and trying to open them up.
Yep.
I guess one other thing, it sounds pretty related to kind of what we were just talking about. Just good questions, I guess, to ask. It's pretty broad.
Yeah, so it just depends on when. So, inside every answer that you get inside of an application, there's a lot of hidden truth behind it, right? So you have to be strategic with the questions you ask, because you're actually not only looking for the answer, but you're looking at how they answer the answer, if that makes sense. So when I ask, like, how much another debt do you have besides a mortgage, I'm listening to how much pain they have, but also figuring out who I'm talking to, right? So they're going to respond a few ways. So number one, they're going to say, we got about 30 grand in credit card debt, and they say it fast. And that tells me he knows his numbers. But if he says, I don't know, I think then I know that there's another party involved, right? And especially if he says think, more than likely he doesn't really know, right? Like if you handle the finances in your household, you know the numbers. It's just something that kind of rules your life. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, if they're spot on, they give you exact numbers right away, then you're talking to the right person, because they're going to be able to give you all the emotional tie behind the result that they want. So one of the good questions, I think, to answer your question is, what are some good questions to ask up front? Anything that's open-ended to what gets them talking, because you're gonna hear certain things about them. You're gonna hear their demeanor, if they're confident, the way they talk, right? Because it's kind of like knowing what their job title is. Like if they're a manager, they talk a specific way, right? But if they're customer service, they talk a specific way. If a nurse doesn't talk the same way as an executive. One is more caretaking, one is more authoritative. Make sense? Mm-hmm. And because of that, they're used to being responded to in a certain way. And I don't want to go too deep on you to get you more confused, and you'd be like, oh shit, what the right? Like how do I respond to all this? So in the bare minimum, you want to get them talking so you can hear a few things. One, the environment that they're in, like hearing the background, you're hearing their tonality, and you're hearing certain words that they say, like I want versus I need. Make sense? Mm-hmm. I would like to see versus I want to hear, right? Because when they're telling you how they interpret information and their preferences. So if they say, hey Matt, I want to see what you guys have to offer. Yeah, let me show you. Make sense? So now it's like, okay, I'm on their level. I'm at their preference. You know what? I want to hear what your rate is. Okay, well check this out. Listen, and then go into it, right? So there's all kinds of different little hacks, but I guess at the end of the day, what you're doing right now in your point of your career is you're just getting comfortable with the conversation. So don't overthink it, because fortunately you work with a company that gives you a mass amount of leads. And there's never anything wrong with you calling back later if you miss information, right? If anything, you're actually building rapport, because then they feel like they talked to you before, or they talked to you 3 or 4 times before you actually pitched the deal, right? Like, oh yeah, this is Matt. He knows my number, right? They almost know your number. They know your name, which is a helpful thing. So that should help alleviate a lot of the anxiety that you have on the phone call, because you might be thinking like, oh man, did I miss anything? Oh man, shit. What if he asked me certain questions, right? So the anxiety of that comes with the default response of, you know what, that's a great question. As a matter of fact, when I prepare the information and send it to you, I'm actually going to address that question. Now, can you tell me? And then move back into the conversation, right? So, and you really are making note, right? Because you want to be able to, when you get off the phone conversation or phone call, you want to get with your manager or someone who's a little bit more seasoned, and then find out the answer to that, because that question may come up again, and you're just going to be able to improve the next time you go into a conversation, you get that question. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed like certain part, like credit, at first when we're all switched, it's kind of funny the way our team split up. It's like those were pretty much senior CSRs, which actually only like 3 of us on our team, and then everyone else was regular CSRs. But yeah, we noticed, we're like, well, it's way harder to run credit or whatever. Especially the first calls that they might have heard, just kind of us sounding the way we did. But yeah, we're like, this is way different. And then last 2 or 3 weeks, I'm looking at my pipeline, and pretty much like 80 to 90%. I like ran the credits, so
Yeah.
I'm at least getting, because I've said that so many times when running credits. It's like summer, so that part's getting more and more comfortable. So it's nice knowing just like everything's falling in line. I can only do, Rome wasn't built in a day, so I'm definitely reaching out for help.
Repetition.
And trying more and more.
And have fun with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that is one thing that has changed, going from like the CSR position. It's like not really in control, like when you guys on the phones answer. And so at first it came and it was kind of like a relief, like, wow, I'm my own boss. I'm like, wow, I can really destroy myself right now if I choose to. Like I can just go waste as much time as possible until I get the boot. Yeah. So now it's like, all right, it's like I was setting up just kind of 1003 and things like that, and trying to improve reading like the manuals. So it kind of put me back in school, like, all right, I've got this big test coming up. I need to, just because I was a little worried and wanting to improve, but I'm like, all right, I need to put as much time as I would for this to make sure I pass, or kind of like the NMLS test. Like, my mentality, I mean, I started reading slowly, and like, I don't understand any of this, but as long as I'm doing it, it's going to get more and more familiar. And I was like, I'm not taking no for an answer. I remember my stepsister's mom was like, oh, what are you going to do if you fail? Or like, what happens with that? I'm like, I don't know. That's not even coming in my head. So I'm kind of diving back in and watching like your videos more at home, being more consistent with it, and just kind of thinking about it in general, rather than being like, all right, I'm out of work, screw all this, I'm out of here, I'm not thinking about anything. So and then like coming in on Saturdays and things like that, it's more casual, it feels like now. Not as bad. I was like, oh, I gotta go into work. It's just like, hey, I just gotta go into the office real quick. I'm gonna talk to these people on the phone. How bad can it be? Mistakes can be made, but it doesn't feel as bad as it might have felt before. Like taking your little quick calls, or just kind of the senior CSR, like, hey, I can help you out only so far, but now being the man to actually give them the answers, I'm enjoying it a lot more.
Good. So there's a lot of guidelines, there's a lot of different rules, a lot of technicalities in lending, but at the end of the day, you don't really use all of it, right? Like this, we have so much software and the calculators at our disposal, it does it all for us, right? Like before, we didn't have that, so we had to know all the formulas that we had to do on a calculator. Now it's a little bit much easier. So, but in the short of it, the real nuts and bolts of it is a loan officer is just a relationship manager, right? You're fostering all these different relationships, but we call them the Joneses, or we call them the Smiths, right? And this becomes our pipeline. And so if you can just kind of grasp that and understand that, it'll help you get a little bit even more comfortable with talking to people, is because you're technically the subject matter expert, but deep down inside there may be some insecurity that you're not truly an expert because you don't remember this specific guideline, right? But just understand that you have a lot of resources. So you have ILA scenarios, you got underwriters, processors, ILA training, right? That are your resources. So it's kind of like, someone came up to you, hey man, I'm looking for a TV. Oh, I got the hookup for a TV. What are you looking for? Right? Like, let's say you did, right? It's like, oh yeah, my best friend works for Vizio, right? Or yeah, I got a buddy who works for LG. Then that's just, you don't need to go into detail. Like, oh yeah, my friend has it. If anything, I'm just going to help you. So, but technically, that's kind of like us. All they're saying is, hey, I need to buy money. I need to borrow money, right? So refinance, cash out rate term. They're basically just, I want to borrow money, and that's really what it is. But all these different words and lingo it clouds our judgment, and then we start getting kind of nervous because we are anxious to figure out what's behind door number 3 when we haven't even gone through door 1 and 2 yet. See, right now, I think you've gone through door number 1 so often, where it's a little bit easier to get the credit pull because it's repetition, right? But where you may stunt your growth or delay your success is being too worried about too far down the road, right? Just take it, just go at it, and it's okay to make mistakes. If anything, mistakes are going to help you the most, because number 1 is you're a junior, no one's really going to hold you accountable. You know what I mean? Like, no one's really going to get upset. But 2 is that mistake is going to show you the right way to do it, right? You're going to learn from it. So more engagement, more contact, more action that you could have right now, the better. Because in a month from now, you're going to look back, you're going to be able to watch this video and be like, dude, I was so green at that point. You know what I mean? Like, man, I had no idea what I was doing at that point. And then a month later, you're so much far in advance, right? So only thing that the content that I give it can really help you with is little nuts and like little bits and pieces of how to help with certain aspects. So from pitching, selling, marketing, mindset, things like that. But it all adds up to How do you produce efficiently, right? And how do you kind of bypass the years and years of trial and error, right? So I'll help you kind of foresee some of the problems that a lot of LOs run into, even seasoned LOs, and in an exchange, you'll be able to make more money faster. Cool. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, and honestly, I'll probably incorporate it in the branding. I kind of have like a rough version of that, like just letting them know, like, oh, everything's done under one roof, and then kind of when I lock someone in, it's like, hey, we got productions assistants, processors. It's like just multiple eyes on your file. Just everyone's double checking to make sure everything's looking good. So yeah, I kind of like, there's a lot of tools at the disposal. So I want to be more thorough for the borrower to let them know the process, and then also be more thorough for the process, like everyone else that touches the file. But yeah, I do like the idea of like consultant helping them out, and that rather than just like, what do you have? All right, well, see you later. I can't make any money off that. So I do like the helping aspect and that mindset a lot more.
So a big takeaway from this conversation is don't overthink it, right? Don't be too hard on yourself. Don't think everything's a test. Just relax, be happy that you are licensed to sell money. That's all it comes down to. But at the end of the day, we're marketers and we're actually servers. We're not salespeople, right? We're going to serve solutions. We're not going to sell a rate or a fee. Make sense? Mm-hmm. And if you can kind of adopt that mentality, it's going to radiate through you. And now you're not worried about questions because you genuinely want to help them. And so the right thing and right way to help them is, if you don't know the answer, just jot it down. Say, you know what, I'm going to get that answer for you. Right? And if you really want to help them, when they tell you specifics, like I need $25,000 and I need a 15-year fix. Okay, $25,000, why is that important to you? Right? Because you're genuinely interested in wanting to help them. As opposed to a salesman, okay, you need $25,000, got it. You need a 15-year, got it. Let me work that up for you. They don't care about the person, right? Mm-hmm. They're just like, okay, let me go and work that up for you. Here's my pricing. And then they lose. But if you actually focus on that individual and remember that individual knows absolutely nothing about the guidelines of 1003, the technicalities of mortgage. They're not an MLS license. So be confident because you are. Make sense? Was it helpful, the mentoring?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of gold? Cool, man.